Okay, so there's a couple of videos, a couple of dreams, sorry, they're going to cover off on this one. This one is going to probably be called Ghosts and Vampires. They were side-by-side dreams. I think there's 5 days between them, so I thought I'd cover these off together. So this one starts, I think this one is more one that happens sort of like midnight, let's say. I keep saying midnight, but what I mean by that is it happened in the middle of the night somewhere. I'm not saying 12 o'clock, but it was around that. I didn't actually write this one down immediately because it was one of those dreams where I felt like there was more available. There was more that was going to happen, and so I just, as soon as I woke up, I kind of thought about the dream. I think I went to the toilet or something like that, and then I went straight back, hoping that I was gonna, go straight back into that dream. The problem is, you see, with my dreams, in a way, is that normally I will always just write them down straight away. And as I mentioned in other dreams, that means that sometimes my wife wakes up and sees me sitting up in bed, texting on my phone, and thinks, "What's he up to?" And so normally I do it straight away, get the initial impressions, get everything in, and then try and go back to sleep. So this one was more middle of the night. Let's say I woke up at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, something like that. I've tried to go back to sleep and get back into the dream. It never happened. So when I woke up, a few hours later, then I'm writing the dream down from what I remember. Okay, so this might be missing a little bit in comparison to others, but it was quite a vivid dream. So there's a lot of detail in here anyway. Okay. So anyway, that's the background on that one. Yeah, so never got back into the dream. Right, there we go, cool. So, how the dream starts is I'm in my childhood home. Okay, so this happens frequently. Again, if you've listened to many dreams, you'll hear a lot of me talking about childhood home, back garden of my childhood home. Oddly, very, very rarely am I actually in any of the other houses that I lived in. Not that I lived in many. I lived in a flat, then I lived in a... yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking about a place we rented. It felt like it was haunted. I know that sounds weird, right? Felt like it because there was something that happened. It was something, my daughters were very young at the time. So one of them was kind of born there, and the other one was quite young, like 3 or something like that. And they had a experience where they were describing somebody being in the bathroom with them. That was a bit creepy, but I can't really remember the details actually. But I did get a bit of a dodgy vibe from that house. But this is all way before Christian. This way before I was Christian, and just the impressions I got was there's something not quite right with this place. But again, it is what it is. I can't really give you any detail. I can't really remember much detail. So anyway, this is at the childhood home, and yeah. So the layout is sort of similar to what it was, with the kitchen, the lounge sort of area, dining area. That was all about the same. We used to have this little passageway that linked the garage to the back garden. It was just a passageway that went between the two. That was part of the house. It was meant to be kept clear all the time. So it was so that if you were doing, like my dad used to do a lot of building work. He used to do a lot of work on stuff, so he wanted it free, so he could run like a wheelbarrow, let's say, through easy and not have to run it through the house. He'd run it through this passageway. But there was talk that we were going to sometimes maybe turn it into a downstairs bathroom. It never happened. Well, it did in this actual dream. So it would be kitchen and then toilet, and then garage. So it was kind of like a weird spot really for a bathroom anyway, being next to the kitchen. Yeah, not the best. But yeah, that's where I think we were thinking about doing it at some point. But anyway, this is what happens. So I'm walking through to the kitchen, getting to this hallway bit, and part of the hallway, rather than there being this back door to the back garden, is actually there's a bathroom in that space. Just a toilet, just for something basic. So I go in and obviously go to the toilet, come back out, and as I come out, I bump into this. I say on here, bump into a young girl / boy. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was a boy. I am pretty sure it was a boy, but I wrote young boy, girl. I can't really remember. But anyway, and so they were they were quite young. I think they were probably sort of like maybe 10, 9, 10, 8, 9, 10, something like that, around that sort of age. Um, and as I went out the toilet, they were kind of standing there, and I was like, "Oh, hello," sort of thing. I didn't not recognise them. I didn't really. Well, I don't remember. I know I didn't know them as such, but I wasn't kind of super worried at the same time. But I just carried on walking through the kitchen bit, and then I'd be into the lounge diner. So the lounge diner is very similar to how it is right now, like for my house. It's a pretty similar sort of house layout. Um, but yeah, because I'm in the dining room right now, and then we've got the lounge, which is all part of it. It's all open. It used to, when a lot of these houses were made, it was two separate rooms, and then they would smash the wall out, or smash a lot of the wall out, so it was just one big room. Ours is the same, but actually, with my parents' place, we were the ones who actually smashed that wall out. We were the first people to do that. Whereas I moved into this place, it was already done. But so anyway, I walk out, and walk into the dining room area by our patio doors. We have patio doors here, so sliding glass doors. Our ones are knackered. I mean, probably as old, if not older, than the ones we used to have back at my family home when I lived there like 20 years ago. So anyway, so when we come out, so we come out. This boy starts talking a bit random, really. I mean, he just starts talking about how they lived in the so they lived in the 1940s, something around then, and he died in World War II. So again, 30s, 40s, something like that sort of time frame, which would suggest really that if he died in the 40s and he looked about 8, 9, 10, I mean, it technically would need to be a little bit later than the 40s, because it just wouldn't tally up time wise. But it was something like that. He died during the Second World War, and he's talking about aspects of his experiences of being a kid. He died as a kid, and this is a ghost, okay? But it takes me a little while to actually understand that. I mean, he's talking about his life in the 1940s, and I'm kind of like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Not really aware. I mean, it was all set in like modern times, this dream, but I don't think I really thought too much about it. I was just listening to this kid talk. But in the corner of the room, so basically where I am right now in my house, the kitchen is over this side. So it's this side that you can see the back here. If you went through that wall, that would be my neighbour. So we're a semi-detached house, so it's just us connected to one other house. That's it. Nothing on our other side. But yeah, through that door over here is our kitchen. So through there is our kitchen in front of me, directly in front of me. And it was exactly the same, as I said, format, sort of, as to how it was in the family home. So I've just come through that door, and now I'm in the dining room area, and the lounge sort of living room area is over there. That's exactly the same as how it was. And I came around here, and I'm standing, let's say, more or less where I'm talking. Well, no, probably a bit more over here, but around here, I'm talking to this kid, and I look in the corner, which would be right here, right in the sort of back corner. Just because I noticed that that there was an old woman who was in a rocking chair. That's a bit creepy. So she's in a rocking chair, just kind of rocking in the corner, not saying anything, which is a bit off-putting while this kid's talking to me. And as I said, the boy girl, I'm pretty sure it's a boy. He's friendly enough, he's talking to me, he's kind of really interested. He's a typical young boy, who's kind of enthusiastic, telling me about all stuff that happened, looking up at me and stuff while he's talking. And yeah, I'm just listening to what this kid's got to say. I had a feeling, though. I don't know why I had a feeling, but yeah, I'm not going to go through that, because the bit I say here, I've got a feeling, and this was to do with age. I'm talking about somebody, a friend of my daughter's, and they come from Romania, but I don't think it's got anything to do with that. But I'll mention it just because there's something that comes up that's a word that I don't understand. So anyway, that's say I get a kind of non-UK feel in some way. I don't know why that might be, but I didn't really get that from the boy. I don't know. It's just, as I said, I'm not sure. Even write down here. I'm not sure if this is because of the age. Because this boy was, I felt, was about the same age as my daughter was at the time, which would have been about 10. I think he was maybe a little bit younger than that actually, but maybe more like 8. But just because of his kind of maturity, I suppose, the way he was talking to me and stuff, felt a little bit younger. Anyway, as I said, I'm not sure why that thing came up, but I heard a word being said. Now, this I've tried to Google, try to find something about it, and it sounds like a word, like 2 words, which are Jewish, Hebrew, but they're not. So it's almost like 2 words put together, but it's not either of them. Neither of them exist. And how I would describe this word, so I heard it like more than once, I think. And the word, I wrote it down as Yedishu, like Yedishu, Yedishu, because it sounded like Yeshua, as in Jesus, Yeshua. That's the Hebrew of Jesus. But I wrote down, it also sounded a little bit like a sneeze at the end, which is why the issue comes from. A little bit like a, when you sort of sneeze, a tissue sort of thing. So it was like, for Yeshua, and then dishu for tissue. Yeah, strange. Really, really strange. And I Googled it, and I was just thinking, because I've had this before actually. I've had quite a few times where I've heard a word in a dream, and I've been like, I don't know what that word is. I'm going to quickly write that down, and I start looking things up, and like business names come up, some African business comes up, or something random. I'm like, pretty sure it's nothing to do with that, or some Instagram of somebody's fashion photos. I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not a clothing brand. So I always try and kind of work out what these things are. I did actually have one where that was funny. I had like a, what's it called? A YouTuber guy who I highly rate. I think he's really, really good. Called Lee Brainard, and he was basically talking about some stuff, and there he goes, page 50 in this one. I'm almost there, right? But he was talking in this dream, and I heard the word that sounded like shlofa. I was like, shlofa, what's that all about? And it ended up being shofar, which is the horn that's blown. Yeah, what was it? Something to do with. Yeah, there you go. I wrote this down. This was back on like July of 2024. I put Minor Dream, Lee Brainard. Again, he's a YouTuber, Christian YouTuber, having a chat about prophecy. And I woke up from the dream, and I just had the word Shlofar. So SHLOFAR or SHLOPHA, Shlofar. And it took a while, but then I got, oh yeah, it's shofar, which is the horn, the Jewish word, but it was somehow mixed up. So that's where, I would sort of say, I was trying to go through that same process. There you go. I wasn't going to do a video about that, but that made sense to me just to roll that in there real quick. Okay, so this was Yedishu or something like that. Now, obviously, I started when I woke up. There's other little parts to this. There's little parts. Actually, I'll do that first. After I heard Yedishu or Yiddishu, I started to get a bit of a strange. I started to get this weird vibe coming from this granny. Not friendly, and so this could have been. I describe here like an imposter vibe I get. Now, sometimes that's just before something about to happen. Now, if you watch the Demonic Realm series, which I highly, highly recommend, I've been watching it back. I was up to like episode 5 or something. I really like the way that they all came together. To be honest, I know that might sound a bit big-headed, but I felt really good about that series. There was some really good information in there. Really interesting the way you can see all the demonic attacks and stuff like that. How they're all progressing. How I'm getting more and more information, understanding more and more. So I'd highly recommend that you do watch that series. I know it's a long series because it's about 9 episodes. but they all come together really, really well, I think, anyway. So in this one, as I said, I'm getting an imposter vibe. I'm starting to sort of almost like back off a bit, thinking there's something not quite right with this granny. I mean, I got a bit of a strange vibe from her anyway, but she was just sitting there not saying anything. So I was like, leave her to it, sort of thing, This one this started to feel, it started to take a bit of a turn, and so then I started to get. It was like, again, I'll say, it's like my spidey sense went off, and I always discuss that as that's like the Holy Spirit sort of telling you something's not quite right here, and kind of ringing an alarm, which happens, and you'll see that again in many of the dreams I mention. So this one, the alarm starts somewhat sounding, let's say, in my mind, and so I think, well, nothing's happened just yet. I'm going to start testing these spirits. Testing these spirits. There's a scripture on that. Test the spirits. It's talking about prophets and stuff like that. I actually wrote that down as a scripture I would share, but it doesn't really fit here. Or does it? Let's see. Test the spirits. There it is. I'm going to say it just while it's here, just because I never actually went through this on the demonic series. So I'm just going to read it out. I don't think it's quite applicable here, but I'm going to read it out. It's some scripture. It's helpful. All right. So this is 1 John, verses 8:4-1, and it's called. How it reads is, "Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world." Actually, that is very fitting for what we've just been talking about, because I'm thinking the kid's all cool. He's okay. He's all right, but as it says, test the spirits, because you don't know whether they're from God. Again, that's what I was doing, and I'm just about to do. So sorry, that is actually a good spot for it. When I was going through the demonic series, there was nothing really where this sort of thing happened that I'm just going to describe. Not really. Okay. Sorry about that weird. I'm kind of jumping about a bit, but this is sometimes how the videos come together. So there's nothing pre-planned about any of my videos. Like, very rarely. I mean, I might write down something like, "Oh, mention this," but most of the time it's in the text anyway, so I'm just reading it out. But when scriptures come in, or something comes to mind, I don't tend to ignore it. I want to, because I often think, well, that's the Holy Spirit who's telling me to share that, so I don't want to disobey that, and I'll just get into it. So it does mean that these videos quite often stretch out longer than I intend, but that's fine. This is not for me. This is not for my glory. This is for God's glory, and this is for that message getting out. Okay? So as I said, starting to feel that the dream's getting a little bit hijacked, and now I'm starting to think, because in the dream, I'm thinking like, yeah, ghosts. Okay, not really thinking much about it, but it's not like I'm not in my earthly wisdom, let's say, and I know what ghosts are. They're demons. Of course, they're demons. So wait a minute. Why am I talking to a demon? It's that kind of realization comes to me, and so from now on, as I said, I'm far more cautious, and I started actually asking some probing questions. So at this point, actually, this little ghost boy has been telling me loads of stuff, and I've just been like, yeah, oh, really interesting. I've just been nodding along. I've not been asking any questions, nothing like that. I've just been listening to what this kid's got to say. But then I start asking some probing questions, and what's interesting is I then start putting, in Jesus' name, I want to know this. In Jesus' name, I want to know that. Making sure that I'm going to get some truth out of this entity that at this point could have just been deceiving me. Demons deceive. That's what they do. So I'm starting to now think, this kid's just talking a lot of crap. 1940s. You died in the 1940s. What, you were bombed, were you? Or what happened here? What are you talking about? I'm just thinking, why are you telling me this story? I'm starting to get very skeptical. And as I said, I'm just very aware that I'm like, this isn't real, And I'm like, ghosts are demons. What am I doing? And I was asking a lot of questions, and I was actually getting some interesting answers. I remember writing down, I got some interesting answers back, but I can't remember what those answers were. I didn't write them down. So anyway, that's me now coming out of that dream. Now my thoughts were, well, I've kind of given you my thoughts really as I'm going through. Okay, I've got a demon that's communicating with me, trying to tell me some stuff, trying to deceive me. I don't know what its real aim was. It was just telling me it's past. I'm like, okay, well, when's this gonna when you're going to hook me into to doing something, or give me some sort of lasting impression that I'm going to act on. I'm waiting for that. It never really happens. Um, and the kid's all right. I mean, I don't get a bad vibe from the kid, but this old granny that's in the corner, I'm almost like waiting for her to, she's just been rocking on the chair, and I'm waiting for her just to suddenly animate and just dive at me and strangle me or something like that, because that's happened many times. Where suddenly quite a mundane sort of calm situation just takes a turn real quick. And so I was kind of a bit on my guard here, thinking this is going to happen in a minute, but when's it going to happen? What's going to trigger it? And so I'm just like corner of my eye, sort of like keeping an eye on this thing, thinking I'm ready for you. And that's where, as I said, I started to invoke Jesus' name too, to get some truth and if anything, demonstrate the fact that if you attack anyway, I'm gonna immediately banish you anyway. And do you really want Jesus turning up? Yeah, and as I've said many times, I've never had Jesus ever turn up in a dream like that, where I've called on Jesus' name for help in a demonic attack. It's not like I've ever, had an attack and then this bright white light enters the room or this presence enters the room. It never happens like that. It's normally I get to of Jesus, or I get Jesus, or I have to get out a few times, but then they relinquish control and I'm just out of the dream. I'm never there for anything more than that. So anyway, so thoughts. So as I mentioned, I started googling like Yiddishu, and of course I got up those two things, those two words that I already knew, which was Yeshua, which is Jesus, and means salvation, and Yiddish, which of course is the a Jewish sort of language sort of thing. So I was like, oh, okay. I kept on, searching results. I just kept on going. I never got anything that made any sense. So yeah, I mean, dead end, bit of a dead end, that one. But again, it did come from a spirit that was a lying spirit. So what can you get from a liar, I suppose? So that's that one. I want to move on to the next one. This is the vampire section. So this is the ghost one, 21st of the 3rd. This one, 26th of the 3rd. And as I said, this is about vampires. I put here a pretty uneventful, but when I read it back, it had some interesting elements, and I've had a bit of kind of understanding, revelation around what vampires represent now. So I'm going to kind of sort of link that in. Sorry, going back to the ghost bit, that spidey sense thing I mentioned. I wanted to kind of bring your attention actually to one of the dreams that I kind of think illustrates that kind of well, actually, which is in the Demonic Realm series, of course, because that's about spiritual attacks, and that's what it felt like this was going that route, but it didn't quite happen. But if you look for the one that's called Pokemon Attack, which is part 7, that kind of gives you that same sort of vibe, in that it's all good, it's all okay for a bit, and then there's an attack that happens. But it's a similar-ish sort of feeling. And also for this particular one, so the vampire one, I would want to actually link in for you to watch the Zombie Apocalypse, which is part of the Bridge series. Okay, because there's a bridge in that one. There's a bridge in quite a few dreams, so there's a Bridge series. But that one, I reshot that one. You see, I filmed that one initially, and just I kind of came. I think when I first shot it, I was like, yeah, I don't know what that dream's all about, and I got nothing. I mean, I read it, I thought, oh, it's kind of interesting. I'm going to include it because it's got a bridge in it, and it's really similar to another dream that's got a bridge in it, and so I included it, but there was nothing really in it that I kind of understood. It was an interesting dream, so that is really quite a longish dream, a lot of interesting stuff in it, but I didn't really understand it. But the revelation that came out of that, and I'll just mention this up front, was that there were these zombies in it. There was mindless zombies, and there was a kind of like a something that was dead, that had intelligence, and I called it a vampire, because in the same way that the zombies were kind of biting people's necks and biting people, so were these ones as well. But they had a real organization element to them and intelligence. And if you think of anything you've seen, anything you've seen sort of film-wise that's got vampires in it, obviously they're not dumb. They've been around for thousands of years normally in those films, haven't they? So they've collected a lot of wisdom in that time, and they use that obviously to manipulate. Okay, so if you think of that this time, so these vampires, I personally think are representative, and again, this is kind of a little bit of a spoiler in a way, for parts of the well, a description of what I think the zombie is. As I said, I personally think that in that one you've got zombies which are kind of like mindless, and I call it because they're the Walking Dead. Okay, in the Bible, it more or less it says the same sort of thing. There is a reference for that, which is called basically you're dead already. You're dead already. You're dead in your sins. Okay, so the zombie to me started to then make a bit more sense as to what that meant. That would be the person who doesn't have salvation. So they are dead in their sins. You know, they're already dead. So it's just a case of them actually dying, and then that's it. You know, they're not going to go to heaven. They're not going to be reunited because they don't have salvation. So they're the Walking Dead, okay, which is a zombie. And you've got the vampires, who are kind of like the leading class, let's say, of the zombies, and they were the first ones. They were the organisers. They wanted to take over cities and stuff like that. So that was like it was almost like a beginning of a takeover. Let's say a beginning of a takeover. They're dead in their sins. They are because they're also Walking Dead. So they're representing non-believers as well, and they're representing those that are in places of power. I would suggest. Okay, so they're organisers. They're intelligent. They are the architects of what is all going on. I think in that zombie one, and it all starts honestly. This is not a spoiler really at all because it all starts coming together, and it's a really interesting one. It's one of those dreams where I thought it was nothing, and then suddenly I'm like, whoa, this has got stacks to it. Well, now the reason why I wanted to shoot this one was purely because I thought, well, I've got revelation on that. That maybe makes a bit more sense now. And then when I start reading this, it does start making more sense. I'm like, okay. Anyway, so Zombie Apocalypse, okay, and that's in the Bridge series. So definitely check that one out, along with the rest of the series. Obviously, check out all the videos, but you know what I mean. That's one that kind of connects in here. So as I've written here, so these are my thoughts actually as I'm writing the dream. Pretty uneventful, you know. I was living. Guess what? In the family home. Okay, so the family home I've just described. That's where there was the basis for this dream as well. Okay, so I was living out of living out of some sort of base, but it was located directly behind where I used to live. And that was also the base of a UFO dream I had as well. See, loads of these link in. UFO invasion or something like that it might be called because it was an invasion. So again, check that one out. But this is the same location for this dream. Okay, so this is a big space behind my house where I used to live. We were like the second from last house in our whole massive estate, and at the end of the estate, behind us, was actually a big industrial. I say big industrial estate. It wasn't big, but it had like a fruit packing place, and it turned into a furniture sort of place. It was more a place that they sort of sold and distribute. It was a distribution centre, so we used to have massive big HGVs, big lorries coming in, and it was so noisy. Massive lorries, all turning up, engines running for ages. They were because initially when the fruit place there, they were refrigerated lorries. So if you imagine, like, because they need to keep everything refrigerated quite often, these lorries would stay there overnight. They'd have their engines running the whole night, so the refrigerator sort of noise was on. You always had this background noise all the time. My mum, she complained all the time, saying the sound levels out there right now are ridiculous. As a family, we can't get to sleep because the amount of noise. Can you get them to change what they're doing? And obviously the council were like, no, can't do anything. I was like, brilliant. So you can't control obviously what kind of business goes in there. They were there for years. So we had when I was a kid, like a young kid, like most of my life, there was always some sort of drama with them, and until it changed into a furniture place, and then it was quite a bit quieter. And then they actually moved to a commercial estate in the centre of town, and yeah. But as far as I know, they've still got something there. I mean, I might have to check it out at some point. But I just don't go that way because it's now, a couple of miles away from where I live. Got no reason to be down there. I sometimes do just as a nostalgic kind of. Let's have a little bit of a wander around there again. See if the person who's bought a house has done anything with it. It looks exactly the same, but it's still interesting because it brings back loads of memories for me. Tons of memories, and really fond memories. So, anyway. So I'm actually, it says here, living out of some sort of base which is located at the back of our family home. Why would I be living there? I think it's more like I was working there really, but I don't know why I wrote living. But I don't basically. So let's say I'm working there, okay? Because I think it's more that. Let's say I'm working there, and in my time there, I've overheard plans that were being made in secret. Okay, secret plans that are coming from this place. I've got no idea as to how this is used, but as I said, it's some kind of base. So I don't know whether it's a military base or some kind, which again links into this UFO thing, which is kind of interesting. But whatever this secret was, and I don't actually find out what the secret was, but in the dream I knew what the secret was, and I wanted to deliver this message to somebody who needed this message needed to get out. This was big. There was some sort of massive conspiracy, something really, really big going on, and I had this knowledge and I wasn't on board with it, and I don't think I wasn't meant to have heard about it. I was just, let's say, just like some little worker that is a nobody, but these other people are hatching plans that are big plans. Okay, so and as I was leaving this big base area, there was a group of youngish vampires. Okay, they're all talking around a table, and as I sort of briskly walked past them, as they were kind of like the last people as I was leaving this base area, I could tell that they were suspicious of me. It was like, he overheard that, didn't he? He's overheard that. It was that kind of feeling that they realised they've made a mistake. They'd been too open with what their plans were, and I just heard it. Like you see in movies, right? We're gonna have to kill this guy off. That sort of thing. That's what it's like. So I left, and I knew I needed to get out there and pretty quick. And so I started to pick up the pace as I'm walking. I'm walking now quite quickly, thinking, I think they're gonna start following me. Okay, so that's the impression I got. And I left. And how this industrial estate in reality comes out, it just comes out onto a country road, just a random country road. And back then, there was nothing really there. I mean, what they've now done is they've turned a lot of the surrounding area, they've actually turned into a brand new housing estate, which is what they do in the UK. Any little spot, right, we've knocked down, I don't know, a petrol station, bung some houses on there. Or we've knocked down a pub, stick some houses on there. That's the answer to everything. Anything goes out of business, stick some houses on there. Yeah. And obviously, the closer to town, the more likely it's going to be a block of flats or something, to make the most of that room. And it's just, yeah. Anyway, so that's what it's like in the UK. Okay, a lot of just town after town after town, not a huge amount of space in between them. Not necessarily massive populations, but it just feels like a sprawling urban thing now. I mean, we do have countryside, obviously, but we're getting less and less and less of it. Let's put it that way. Certainly feels like it. So, but I guess it's because of my area. I'm thinking of my area, but I guess I don't. There's certainly a huge amount of homes being built all over the place at the moment because we've got so many people coming into the country. So I leave this place. And as I said, I'm walking fast initially, just not to attract too much attention. And then as I'm getting out, let's say like of the little bit of road into this base until it gets to the main road part now, and then I start jogging. And my house, as I said, this is behind my house, but to actually get to my house, I'd have to like go all the way around this thing to get there, because there's only one way I can get back to my house now. Okay, and this is down a little alleyway. There's off this country road, which is a little thin lane. It's like wide enough for 1.5 cars. It's one of those kind of things where you have to, if a car's coming towards you, you kind of squeeze past each other slowly. It's that kind of road. Well, it is like that a little bit further down, but this little part is wider. It's a double lane actually at this part, but not that that's overly relevant. But there's a little alleyway you see that when this this country road kind of goes a little bit further down. Then off of it, there's just this little walkway. It's just a public footpath, and that was the public footpath that runs behind my house and would run all the way up until their base would be there again. It looked like a chain link fence, which is what would be there. I'd go through a little alleyway, and then I could get round to my house. Or, as I mentioned here, as I go down this alleyway, and I used to do it, I'd climb over our sort of like 6 foot fence, because there was a bit of a mound of dirt that was built up behind the fence, so I could kind of step up to it, get a little bit higher up, and then I'd like jump onto the fence and go over my back fence into my garden. I sometimes did it. It was almost like a little fun thing to do. You're always looking for adventure, aren't you, as a kid? So climbing trees. There was loads of trees along there, so I was always climbing trees. It was just trees, a path, little sort of patches where there wasn't trees, and we'd make little bases and stuff like that. And yeah, fun times. Simpler times when climbing trees and having a muck about with your mates is all that you were looking to do. Wake up at like 5 o'clock, go out, come back at like 6, 7 o'clock at night, and that would be it. I'd come back for maybe a drink, wouldn't eat. I'd come back for maybe an evening meal, go out again, and then come back. As soon as it was getting dark, I'd come in. So that's basically what. And then obviously in the winter, when the sun comes down, obviously a lot earlier, just meant I spent less time outside, but it would be as much time as I could, and then I come back in. So I wasn't one of these kids roaming the streets like 9 o'clock at night, stuff like that. It wasn't like that at all. But so this is what happened. So I'm basically just very much have the impression that I am being followed, and so I run to make sure I can get along. And what I kind of think in my mind is, if I see them, because this alleyway is a long alleyway, and it's one of those, if somebody was coming towards you, and it did happen, obviously it was an alleyway that was used quite a lot, because it cuts off a huge proportion of the estate. You can just carve straight through this massive residential estate, so it was used quite a bit, and people would bike down it as well. I think we even did that occasionally, because it wasn't used like super used like really frequently, but you would bump into people occasionally. And I always thought that it was always like, well, if there's anybody dodgy walking down there, like, you've got nowhere to go. Either you realise that they're dodgy and you look like an idiot just going running down the alleyway back the way you came, or you just think, let's just hope this person's okay. I mean, I didn't really think like that as a kid. You're very naive as to the dangers, aren't you, when you're a kid? But and you just walk past someone. But as I said, in this scenario, I'm thinking, either if I see them, like if I look back and I see them coming up the alleyway, obviously, right, I'm jumping over my fence and getting in the back garden that way. Don't know how I would do, because obviously I wouldn't be able to unlock the door, the sliding door. So I imagine I'd be banging on the door and trying to get the attention of my parents or whoever to let me in. Again, I didn't know what age I was, just so you know as well. So I don't know whether I'm working age, so I would imagine I was maybe still at home, or I owned the home. I don't know, really. I don't really know. I got the impression that maybe I was living at home. I don't know. Or I would go round and then I would come home that way. As I said, this is the staging area for the UFO dream that I had, which is, as I said, I think it's called UFO invasion or alien invasion or something like that. That was really interesting. So my takeaways from that, I've kind of really said it. I mean, you've got then I've overheard a plan that are being put together by these intelligent vampires, which I think represent the dead. So those that aren't dead, as in they are dead in their sins, they are non-believers, and that they are the intelligence behind them, and that they are hatching plans of some sort. They were obviously dodgy, and they were obviously a big thing, and I wanted to get that information out. Well, that's kind of what I'm doing, aren't I? Really, in a way, I'm sort of videoing, and I'm going through plans. I'm talking about things, of the future that can be happening. I'm backing up with biblical stuff and my experiences. So I'm kind of doing that in a way. And if you think of them as like a dark demonic force, well, I'm kind of, in a way, well, what am I doing? I'm exposing them, which is what I did in this dream. So I'm exposing the darkness. So that is my plan in this as well. So as I said, that's really it. So I know it was a long video and it had a lot of elements to it, but hopefully so you you did like, the kind of aspects of that and me linking in the other dreams. And hopefully that makes you want to watch those dreams. So as I said, the Pokemon attack, interesting one. The Bridge Apocalypse is a really, really interesting one. And definitely that UFO, that alien invasion one. That alien invasion one was pretty crazy, to be honest. I couldn't really convey the detail of this UFO I saw coming across. It was crazy. Really, really interesting. Sort of see through, but it was like a spirit in a way, and it was blue. Which again, if you keep watching the spirit realm, you'll see blue, blue. It looked like this. It was blue. This was blue. That was blue, and you were like, okay, there's a theme here. Seems to be everything that I see that's to do with the spirit room tends to have blue in it. All the time. All the time. I don't know why, but it is what it is. I mean, I can only describe what I see. Anyway, so that is that one. As I said, hopefully you found that interesting. And I will see you hopefully on the next one. I'm doing a big batch, so you're going to see a lot of this. I am wearing different clothes. If you see the previous ones, I was wearing a black top, so I have changed that. But it's getting a bit cold actually this morning, so I just put this on for a little bit of warmth. But yeah, I will see you soon.